Twice the Terror.
Welcome to Twice the Terror. I'm Ryan.
I'm Kat.
And we are your hosts. If you're unfamiliar with the show, the way that it works is that each episode, Kat and I bring something of a topic to discuss on whatever theme we've decided for that week, and we kind of inform each other and go back and forth, bounce back and forth. This is a terrible intro. Well, it's been, for a little behind the scenes here, folks, all right, it's been a few weeks since we've recorded, so we're a little rusty, but that's okay. We've got a really cool episode this week. I'm excited. Kat, what are we talking about?
Okay, so I don't know if you know what month it is, but it's June, which means it's Pride Month, and I suckered you into doing a Pride episode.
Woo! Yeah,
so we're gonna cover some gay icons of horror. I'll go into who I chose, but Ryan, who did you pick as your gay icon for this episode?
Well, I decided to talk about something that I don't even know if it's still in the meme culture or if it's still even relevant to Pride or whatnot, but it was a big deal for quite a big time, and that is the Babadook.
I love the Babadook so much.
It's so ridiculous. Like this whole, we'll get into it, but how it evolved and how it, all that stuff, is so entertaining. And Kat, so who did you pick for our Pride Month episode?
I picked the man, the moth, the legend, Mothman.
Mothman. That's Shannon. My wife Shannon will walk around the house doing that sometimes, just like to the beat of YMCA, the young man. She'll just go Mothman. So
I love it. I love that.
It's so great.
I love Mothman, especially like me having grown up in Appalachia. My dad is from West Virginia, and he is obsessed with Mothman, and we watched the Mothman prophecies so many times. My dad read the book. I have the book somewhere
here too. It's a fascinating book, a fascinating story. And also, before we get started, I wanted to say to anybody out there who obviously is celebrating Pride or anything like that, like, Pride Month isn't just June. You know what I mean? It is technically, but, like, making a point of that, like, yes, we are doing a Pride Month episode, but, like, always support people in, you know, the LGBTQIA plus community. All year round, just support people and be an ally. I just want to make that clear because I know there's a lot of companies out there that will jump on like, it's June, Pride Month, and it's like, do you care about anybody?
Anything else?
Any other month? Like, don't just like. So yes, we are celebrating. We are, you know, doing a fun episode, but also like. It doesn't have to be exclusively June. Just kind of wanted to put that out there to everybody.
So, okay, if you are tuning into this episode, and this is 100% like, I have taken the wheel. Ryan is like the baby in the carriage from the White Lady of Whoopsie, like clinging over dear life. I'm creating the corner. Like I'm definitely the one who's leading this shit show today.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, we typically kind of decide these topics. Between, you know, ourselves, we kind of go, hey, do we want to do this week? Let's do this week. And so it's kind of like a mutual, like, hey, let's just do this. And we've had a lot of changes behind the scenes at Twice the Terror. By the time this episode is out, we'll have a new YouTube channel exclusively for Twice the Terror, all that stuff. And so as soon as we kind of started making these changes, I get a text message from Kat that just goes, okay, since we're doing these changes, can we do a Pride Month episode? I was like, yeah, of course we can. Let's do one immediately. She's like, great, we're recording next week. I've got my thing. I was like, great, awesome. So I'm excited. This is fun. I mean, like I said, we always kind of do our own research, but I told Kat, kind of just take the wheel. Let's do this. You know, this is an awesome episode.
Great.
So
for someone who is tuning into this and you're like, why are the Babadook and why are Mothman gay icons? And like, why did you choose a monster from like a horror movie villain and a monster for this? And this is going to kind of get into something called queer coding and queer icons and villainy. Queer coding is when a character is given certain traits that are traditionally seen as being not hetero or cis, and traits that are more commonly associated with being like gay, lesbian, trans, but the character is never explicitly said to be LGBTQ plus. So if you're thinking of some examples of queer coded characters and villains, there's Ursula, Scar, Dr. Facilier, pretty much any Disney villain. All Disney villains are pretty much queer coded. Facilier had a crop top and was a little bit flamboyant, and then you have Ursula, who is quite literally modeled after a drag queen, Divine, who appeared in a lot of John Waters films and is from Maryland. There's also Jareth from Labyrinth. There's this has been done a lot in anime. Orochimaru from Naruto is queer-coded, so is James from Pokemon. Then there are also the devil guy from Cow and Chicken, the devil in Futurama, the devil in South Park. Him from the Powerpuff Girls is depicted as being a devil, and that's its own trope, its own stereotype in and of itself, called the flaming devil, where you have these devil-like characters given effeminate, flamboyant, sometimes genderless traits. It could keep going. There's like Dr. Frankenfurter, and then there's more like heinous depictions where you have Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. I said myself that Silence of the Lambs is currently one of my favorite horror films. And a lot of people have said, Buffalo Bill was not a trans woman. Buffalo Bill had done a lot of terrible things, and, what he was doing was more about torturing women than, trying to become a woman himself. So, but even still, a lot of people associate Buffalo Bill with transness, and that is so far from the truth. Same thing with Norman Bates. Norman Bates dressing up as his mother. Then there's fucking Sleepaway Camp. When I got to the end of Sleepaway Camp and that whole like gag reveal, I was pissed. So pissed at that movie. So that's just like, those are just like a few examples that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of that stuff comes from an era where topics were not handled with any sort of sensitivity or care or anything like that. So when it comes to like bad representations from the 80s and the 90s and stuff, it's stuff that we really have to like, you have to be aware. I mean, a good example, Bill and Ted uses the F word. And that's a film that is a PG movie, one of the most lighthearted movies of all time.
But that's how prevalent that word was, like in the common vernacular of the 80s, that was the time, and it doesn't make it excusable, of course, but you have to kind of look at things based off of the time period that they were created in, and while that may not excuse the behaviors and the language that they use, we're certainly doing far better today. It could be better, could always be better, but I'm glad that there are shows that are at least attempting to have these conversations with people.
Exactly.
As far as like why villains were queer coded, I think this is probably, it's not going to come as a surprise to anybody, but LGBTQ people have not been considered part of the norm, even from the language from the 80s, it's always kind of like this other mentality. And especially right now, we can see that the visibility in the community is being met with still backlash and hate. And queer people have always been treated as this other for a long, long time. And as is tradition with media, other always means bad. People don't like people that they don't understand. So a lot of times these production companies and some writers and directors and producers are just like, do something simple that any pea-brain person can understand, which is just come up with a villain that is not a straight white cis het male, and that is now your villain. And half the examples I gave previously of queer-coded villains are literally devil-like characters. Queer characters are either the villain or they're the joke. It reinforces negative stereotypes about queer people. It amplifies messages of homophobia and transphobia, and ultimately gay people began to associate themselves and their behaviors and mannerisms with these characters. And sometimes, and as we're seeing, this kind of started to get turned around over time slowly. Like, personally, I rooted for Ursula.
Right. Oh, yeah. Ariel was boring. The original Little Mermaid, go back and watch that movie. Ariel does nothing the entire movie, and she makes no character. She has no character arc. She complains about wanting to be with Eric, and by the end of the movie, she gets to be with Eric, and she has earned nothing. And in fact, she doesn't even defeat Ursula. Eric defeats Ursula. Literally, she does nothing that entire movie. She's
All I see with Ursula is an opportunist, and I'm not.
It's true.
Gay kids began to identify with these villains because, you know, that's who they had to identify with, and they became gay icons. Now, again, where does Mothman fit into this? And I promise you, it is not a clean line. There came a point in internet culture where it all leads back to Tumblr. Like,
Yes.
it's like Pepe Sylvia. Like, there's string theory, and like it goes all the way to the top, and the top is Tumblr. And LGBTQ people said, you know, I have had enough of being the bad guy, and if that's what you think of me, fine. Like, they had a fuck it moment where people just embraced and reclaimed what was used against them, and part of that became cryptids, where, you know, you think that queer people are just these weird creatures from this unknown world. Well, so are cryptids, and, you know, fuck it, they're our friends now.
It's the same thing with the Babadook. Like, for anybody who's not seen the Babadook, it's a 2014 Australian horror film. The writer-director was a woman by the name of Jennifer Kent. And she basically, if you have not seen the Babadook, I'm not going to spoil it, but it is a film about a grieving mother who tragically lost her husband and her son that she is taking care of, and the toll kind of everything with her grief and everything with her son is kind of taking on her, and it all kind of like builds to a breaking point when they find this book within the collection of books her son, like stories for bedtime that her son has, called The Babadook. And it's, you know, you open it and it's this horrible pop-up book and everything, and the movie just kind of spirals from there. I'm not gonna like break it down further because I think there's a lot of stuff that people should watch for themselves and make their own kind of like judgment on and everything. But it's a film that kind of like deals with grief and deals with tragedy and deals with
Single parenthood
and you know, how you raise a child, and even, you know, from a child's perspective, what that kind of situation does for the kid and everything like that. It's a really, really great movie, and it has the way this came about with the Babadook. If you haven't, and again, I'm not gonna spoil it, but I will say the Babadook is pretty famous for the way he looks, which is like the drawings of him with this big smile and this top hat, and he's got these like pointy fingers and stuff like that. It's pretty well known. He's very dapper and very just kind of
weird.
He's a little weird. He's a little wacky.
He's a weird little guy.
He's a weird little guy. And this is a film where on the surface there's nothing in it that has anything to do with the LGBTQ community or anything. Like, and the way, again, like you said, the way it started was Tumblr. As a matter of fact, I was trying to do research on this because I recently watched an episode, and this will date this episode, but the latest season of Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs was airing, and they showed the Babadook. Which I'd seen before, but I was like, great, I get to watch the Babadook. And he was talking about this because Darcy the mail girl, she was dressed as the gay pride Babadook. So she was dressed like that with the makeup and like rainbow suspenders and like all this stuff. It's great.
Yes.
And she was talking about that, and he was saying like, basically, he couldn't trace it back. The most he could make, like, of an explanation was in, I think, 2017 Netflix, which no one even knows if this is completely true. I don't know if it was ever verified, but supposedly Netflix accidentally
If the internet said it, it's true.
Right, of
Come
course,
on.
you know. But
The internet's true.
supposedly they put the Babadook in their LGBTQ, like, Pride Month category. And that's kind of where a big part of this started. But it goes even further back to Tumblr posts. Coming from the fact that this was like one of the first films that people started referring to as elevated horror, which I hate that term. It's such an annoying term.
Horror is horror.
Horror is horror. And again, oddly enough, another Joe Bob quote, I think he broke it down the best way, which is elevated horror is a term that people who don't like horror movies use to refer to horror movies they like.
Yeah.
Well, it's elevated horror.
I don't want to admit that I like this dirty genre,
Yeah.
so I'm going to use this, 10-cent word to make it seem dressed up.
So dumb. It's so, but this is kind of like the start of that. This is one of the first few movies in that kind of quote unquote category. So people were analyzing it like, oh, I think it represents this. I think it represents this. And obviously that's what we like here. We want people to have discussion about film and everything like that and have their own opinions. But it got to this point where Tumblr, of course, started making it a meme. And you started seeing these posts, which who knows if they were connected or if it's just people with the same idea, of people being like, very clearly the Babadook is a representation of gay rights, and if you don't understand that, like, and it's kind of started this thing of making fun of people overanalyzing, I should say, these horror films.
Yeah.
And it stuck. And it went from being a joke to people in the gay community, like, embracing it and being like, yeah, absolutely, he's a gay icon, you know? So you started seeing like, Pride
It's counterculture. And, like, what's gayer than counterculture?
Yeah, exactly. And you started seeing Babadooks show up at, you know, gay pride parades and everything. And so this kind of became, like, this grassroots thing of, like, you know, people for pride, like, dressing up and embracing this ridiculousness until it became popular. Instead of it just being people within the community or people who were allies of the community embracing it and having fun. And once it became, like, a popular thing and it was hip and cool to, like, say the Babadook was gay or, you know, part of gay culture or whatever, like, then it totally lost a lot of it.
It was, them being like, you know, fuck it, you think we're monsters? Fine, we'll be monsters. And by taking these monsters that are reviled and feared and depicted them as just normal gay people, kind of showed how idiotic it was to denigrate the entire community like this in the first place. Like, oh, Pennywise and Babadook are so scary. Yeah, well, here's them cutting their wedding cake together.
Right. Exactly.
Like, oh, so spooky. I think there are shirts that say Bigfoot is real and he tried to eat my ass.
Yes, there are.
Like,
I've seen those. They're just...
I brought one.
I love it. Like, stuff like that is so much, it's so much fun. It's a celebration for people who are ostracized, who are outcasts. It's a
protest, too.
Yes.
Like, it is, Pride is a protest. It's here to say, like, we exist. We're not going anywhere. You can vilify us and demonize us as much as you want, but at the end of the day, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not changing. Like, I am the person I am, and I'm not going to allow you to besmirch my good gay name like this.
Yes, exactly.
Also, the way I see it, that there are two types of icons in gay culture, where you have divas and you have monsters. Divas are like, you know, the divas are the culture amplified and victorious. You know, those are your drag queens, your Broadway stars, artists, things like that. It is everything that gay people have been vilified for, celebrated and rewarded and, you know, given that spotlight. As far as monsters go, it's a reclamation of those traits without the high stepping, you know? Like, I get to be this person, and I don't have to make it a performance for you. Not to say that it's all a performance, you know, but it's them saying, you know, I am going to unapologetically be myself, and if you think that makes me a monster, then that's on you. Right.
And I think a perfect example of that being fully embraced is the Boulet brothers and Dragula.
Yes, I've been waiting for their name to get dropped in this episode.
Yeah, 100%. Like, they are an amazing blend of drag and horror and glamour. I mean, it's in their opening title, filth. Yeah, like they are. And don't get me wrong. I'll watch the show, and sometimes there are like things in the show, like
it's so gross.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh god, did we really need to go that gross? But you know what? It's their show, and they want to embrace that, and that's great. Like, I love that, and I love the fact that like they are welcome. Like, it makes
they welcome everybody.
Yes, they welcome everybody, and it makes me so happy when they actually God, I'm gonna just drop Joe Bob Briggs multiple times this episode, but I can't help it. He keeps popping up. They were on Last Drive-In for an episode where they guest starred on it and like hosted movies with him, and then he was on an episode of Dragula. And they said the Boulet brothers said when they were on his show that they had never been more welcomed by a guest and a host and everything like that. And it's just like, that is important. Like,
that is it.
That show, Joe Bob and Darcy, everything, they're all about people from all walks of life coming together and enjoying this thing. They call it the mutant family, you know, because it's all about people who don't belong.
We're a community. Yeah, we're a community, and we all can build each other up, and we can all support each other, and I am 100% for amplifying voices that need to be amplified when needed.
Yeah.
And fucking cowboy hats off to Joe Bob for, you know, doing something, because like the Boulet brothers, who I love, I
Oh
love
yeah,
them so much.
yeah, they're great.
I mean, I love that the way that they do their show. I love that they always are very clear when talking to the performers that, you know, this is a critique upon your ability to follow the rules of the challenge. This is not a critique upon your drag, because
Right.
drag is art and art is subjective. And, like,
Yes.
that is such a huge thing.
Like, we need less of, like, the, like, cutthroat
Right.
garbage reality where it's, like,
Less
tearing people
Survivor,
down.
more Great British Bake Off.
Yeah!
This is, again, side tangents, because that's what we do here at Twice the Terror. This is what
It's
you
true.
tune in for. I think I might have CPTSD from when Ian got kicked off in one of the earlier seasons because of his baked Alaska that got taken out of the fridge by that fucking Karen. And he I think about it sometimes. I'll enjoy a bowl of ice cream, which I shouldn't because I'm allergic to dairy, but I'll enjoy a bowl of ice cream and I'll be like, probably not as good as Ian's baked Alaska.
I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever been that invested in Great British Bake Off, but,
As a baker, I am in it. I'm
Fair point.
fucking there. I'm taking notes.
That's fair. That's a good point. That's fair. So...
I should probably explain why I like Mothman.
Yeah, we should probably get into that. Unless, does anybody want me to talk about Mountain Dew again? Because I can do that.
Mountain Dew is gonna come up. 'cause
It's got it. I mean,
We're talking about West Virginia. Come on.
it's true.
Mountain Mama. So if you have made it this long in life without knowing who Mothman is, so Mothman was spotted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia back in the 1960s. He's a cryptid described as being about 6 feet, sometimes taller, humanoid creature, so man body, but furry body, with an insect-like face like a moth, clawed feet, massive featherless wings, and glowing red eyes.
And if you believe the statue of Mothman, he's got a badonkadonk.
He's
As well.
oh yeah, boy got some cake in the back. I don't know why I can't remember who did the sculpture. We'll have to put it in the show notes, but
Yeah.
that sculptor made Mothman bodacious.
Someone really spent a lot of time
Sculpting
that particular area to make sure it was perfect.
Throughout the 60s, Mothman has been claimed to be seen by hundreds and hundreds of locals. Some people believe that Mothman is a harbinger of death. Others believe that he is a messenger of warning of disaster. On December 15th of 1967, a 2,200-foot bridge spanning the Ohio River connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio. I probably mispronounced that. I'm from Ohio. It doesn't mean I know how to pronounce everything, okay, people? I know how to say cat is. People from Worcester, I'm going to say Worcester. They tell me it's Worcester. I don't care. It's Worcester. This bridge collapsed and 46 people died. And eyewitnesses say that on that, they saw Mothman flying around that bridge in the days leading up to the disaster, that there was like this overwhelming sense of dread throughout the town. And so people think that Mothman had something to do with this.
And also, too, for anybody who's curious, wants more detail on Mothman, there's a great book called The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, and there's a lot of stuff about Mothman that doesn't seemingly tie into Mothman, but does. Like, a lot of people just like, oh, he's a flying cryptid and stuff, but then there's stuff
There's
with...
Men in Black and Injured Cold, and
yes.
there's a lot of stuff.
A lot of weird stuff surrounding Mothman. And if you want, like, a follow-up, definitely watch... Greg and Dana Newkirk's Hellier, because I think season 2, if I remember, I think it's season 2, they really get into stuff about Mothman as well.
Deep. Mothman is huge in West Virginia. I mean, I think he's their official state cryptid. He has a statue in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. There is a Mothman festival. Like, this is a big deal as far as West Virginian icons go. Okay. What Mothman is for Appalachian cryptids is like what Dolly Parton is for Appalachian gayness. And you take the two and you just kiss. That's pretty much what it is as far as it goes for me. Like, what I love about the idea of Mothman being a gay icon is how he combines reclaiming queerness as well as like anti-Appalachian discourse.
Mm-hmm.
For queer hill folk, like I was saying, like this is the spooky Dolly Parton, and Gay Mothman not only challenges gay stereotyping, but also anti-Appalachian stereotyping in very much the same manner. Like, he is the icon for queer kids growing up in the hills, essentially. And if you've made it this far in this description and you're like, it still doesn't make sense to me, then, sweetie, it was never for you. And if you think we're just pulling this nonsense out of thin air, I promise you we're not. Like, if you Google gay Babadook or gay Mothman, anything, you are going to be bombarded with hits. You're like, just search images of gay Mothman, you're going to find stickers, t-shirts, magnets, posters, flags. There's a gay, like a Mothman pride flag at Harold's Haunt.
Oh, yeah,
you can go buy one. There's shirts that say Mothman respects my pronouns.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and also on top of that, like, there's for a while IFC was selling a version of the Babadook with like the Blu-ray with a rainbow slipcover, so you could have that for. So like, it's all over. I mean, go to any convention. I mean, and especially like a horror convention, and you'll see all kinds of gay pride Mothman stuff and gay pride, Babadook, and probably less Babadook now, but Mothman for sure. I think the last convention I was at, I saw like a lot of that still around and stuff.
Like right now, I would say Mothman is still popular, but he's like kind of going out of his like gay pride moment. Just same as Babadook, like things come and things go. I don't know who the next gay icon will be as far as cryptids go. I kind of hope it's the Nightcrawler. Like,
I mean, that would be cool.
As far as like research goes on any of this, if you're interested in doing any further research, there is an Atlantic article that I thought was really well written. That's called "The Unexpected Power of Seeing Yourself as a Villain," and that talks a lot about queer coding as far as villainry goes. There is also a University of Kentucky graduate by the name of Brenton Watts wrote a great thesis paper about the Mothman and other strange things. It's called "Shaping Queer Appalachia Through Folkloric Discourse in Online Social Media Communities." This is very, like, again, it's like a little, not dry. It's kind of hard to get through if you're not fully there for all of it, but it does kind of go into, like, Appalachian culture as well as, like, this new online obsession with the Mothman and queerness. So I thought that was a really good read, and that is kind of the reason why I really love Mothman as a gay icon. And the other one is a book called "It Came from the Closet: Queer Reflections on Horror." Now, this is a series of essays by different writers, but they all kind of talk about watching movies, reading books with queer-coded villains, and putting themselves in the shoes of the villain. And in some situations, they kind of discover that in a lot of ways that the villain was morally superior to the hero. So I thought that was a really interesting read. So if you're interested in doing a little bit more of research into queer coding and queer iconography and horror, I would check out those resources. And ultimately, at the end of the day, is you do not live your life in a bubble. As much as we all want to think that we know every person in our life, you truly don't. So you might think this, you might be hearing some of these things and think, like, I don't know anybody like that. You absolutely do. Yeah. There's no way you've gone this far in your life without meeting someone who's a member of the LGBTQ+ community. And it's about humanizing people, because these people have been demonized for so long. My friends, my family, myself, we've all been, in one way or another, depicted as being the other, as being the monster. So I would say, again, definitely read that book, "It Came from the Closet," and start to associate yourself more with the villains and start to realize, seeing things from the other side of the mirror here. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we're going to wrap this episode up, and we've got some more coming out very soon. Obviously, stay tuned. We're still going to be on the every other week schedule, even though we're moving to we have the new YouTube channel. But please follow us over there. If you like what we do and you want to support us in other places, you can find us on Spotify and as well as Pocket Casts and I think Google Podcasts and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, please just definitely follow us, check us out. And I guess let us know what else you want us to talk about, and if you want any of that merch.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys. Who do you think is going to be the gay icon cryptid of the next coming year? And what subjects do you want to hear us talk about in the future? Because I don't want this to be the last episode we talk about things of this nature. I want there to be future episodes that are outside of June. So give us some suggestions, some recommendations of what you want to hear. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram. And just remember that on June 20th, West Virginia Day, to leave out some pepperoni rolls and Mountain Dew for our man, Mothman.
That is the way to roll. Ah! See what I did there? Pepperoni rolls. Yeah.
Where's the pepperoni and cheese?
Until next time, everyone.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.